Hey, if you don't happen to know who I am, my name is Reese Liker and I am the owner and founder of Define. And today I'm going to be showing you an everyday look with our Tans palette. So first things first, make sure you have your eyeshadow primer on, your eyelids prepped and ready to go. If you don't know anything about eyeshadow primer, definitely check out our video on eyeshadow primer because it's crucial to having a really awesome eyeshadow look that lasts all day and doesn't crease. So eyeshadow primer is on, and let's go ahead and get right on into it. First things first, you're going to need your essentials palette, you're going to need your fluffy crease brush, and a towel to swipe your fluffy crease brush on. So I'm going to swipe my brush on a towel real quick, get off any loose powder, and the first color we're going to use is going to be this matte kind of cream or white shade. Load that up on your fluffy crease brush, and we are going to pat press this from the start of our brow all the way up to the arch on both sides to prevent any dark colors we'll use later from going too far up, because the first thing that hits the primer is what is going to stick and be the most potent in that area. Okay, now that is placed on both sides, we are done with the essentials palette, so you can go ahead and close that. And we are on to our Tans palette. So the first color we're going to use in here is going to be that shimmery white shade. So go ahead and load that up. I think it's such a there's not care on my palette. Beautiful color, sorry for the little distraction. But we are going to pat press this from our arch all the way down the tail. Pat press because it's going to make sure that that color really locks with our primer. And pat press on the inner corner of the eye. Notice I'm only doing it in the area that that primer, or not the primer, that the brush fits. But we're still hitting the primer. Okay, pat press over here, again, from the arch all the way down the tail of the brow. Make sure that looks good. Okay, now we're going to take the fluffy crease, swipe that on a towel to get off any loose powder, because we're going to switch colors now to this kind of gray tan color. Load it up, tap off any excess, and now we're going to feel for your brow bone. We are going to go slightly on top of / slightly underneath your brow bone, because essentially this transition color is just creating a contour so that it can transition your highlight shade into our intensifier, which we'll be using. So we're going to pat press the first 50% of the way, and then with the remainder of what's on our brush, we're actually going to do more of like a sliding or blending motion, angling it down towards the inner corner of our eye. So you can see it's a little bit more potent here versus where we did that sliding or blending motion. Same thing over here, pat press with the remainder of what's on the brush. We're going to gently bring it down closer towards the inner corner of our eye, not going as deep as that highlighter is in the inner corner, if that makes sense. Take your brush, we're going to swipe it on a towel and blend the color we just placed. So using very gentle pressure, light back and forth motions, we are just going to diffuse that color that we placed, blending it into the highlight shade, blending it close to the eyelid where we'll place our next color, making sure there are no harsh lines. Perfect. And you can see the difference here, soft and diffused versus a little bit more of a harsh line. So we're going to blend that out. Again, using very light pressure. I want you to barely be able to feel the bristles on your eyelid, and I don't want it to feel like it's dragging at all. It should just feel super soft and really gentle. We're not using harsh pressure at all because, again, the more pressure you use, the more pigment you'll lose. Remember that. That is a quote you need to keep in mind when we are blending eyeshadow. So if you want your colors to be more potent, that means you need to use less pressure. Now that's blended and we're ready to move on to our next color. So I'm going to take the brush here, swipe it on a towel, and I'm going to now load up the matte brown. So this is our intensifier shade. I'm going to tap off any excess, and I'm actually going to pat press this over my entire eyelid space. So pat press, making sure it is locking with my primer, only occupying the eyelid space itself. Now, I will mention, if you have hooded eyes, you can take it up a little bit higher and almost overlap your transition color, because if you have hooded eyes, it's a little bit harder for you to like really be able to see that color, and so that's where you can take it a bit higher. But I don't happen to have hooded eyes, so that's where I just keep it on my eyelid space because it will still be visible. So pat press, making sure that's really on. Invert if you need to with that brush to get close to the lash line. And pat press. You should not be pat pressing so hard that you're like shifting around your contacts if you wear contacts. but you should definitely have enough pressure to where you're making sure that it is going to lock into that primer and stay. So pat press, inverting to get close to my lash line so there's no gaps. And now we're ready to blend. So take the fluffy crease brush, swipe it on a towel, and we're gonna blend where it meets our transition color. So very gentle back and forth motions up here and out to the side where it kind of meets our foundation and everything we've got going on there. So now you can see soft and diffused versus choppy and blocky. So blending where it meets the transition, blending that outer corner, making sure we don't have any harsh lines and that it's nice and diffused. Now, if you lost a little bit of pigment while you were blending, this is where you can go back in with a little bit more and just pat press, I call it on the core of the color. Not where we blended it, but just in areas that we weren't blending, so in the core. I'm gonna blend right there a little bit more here. All right, and now we're going to learn about a halo. So I want to explain the purpose of a halo. A halo is essentially gonna make your eye look a little bit bigger. When you're wearing eyeshadow, it makes it a little bit more of a formal look. So if I were, you know, just going to the grocery store, doing something a little bit more simple, I might just keep it like this. But if you want the option to take it up a notch or really make it look a little bit more cohesive, I'm going to explain what a halo is. So taking your fluffy crease brush, swipe that on a towel. I'm going to load up my intensifier shade in my palette. Again, that's going to be the closest to black. So I'm gonna load that up on my fluffy crease brush, and the halo is really gonna connect the top to your bottom waterline when it comes to eyeshadow. So now I'm taking where it's placed on my brush, and I'm gonna come about 25% of the way in, actually maybe closer to like 30 to 40. And I'm just gonna pat press that to get that there. And then now I'm going to take my brush, swipe it on a towel so that there's no powder on it. And I am just going to gently blend that back and forth to really look soft, smoked out, and diffused. So you can see that just adds a little bit of oomph to my eyeshadow, makes this eye appear a little bit more, I don't know, like it just looks more round, if that makes sense. So that's a little flare that you can add to the outer corner of your eye. I'm gonna do the same thing over here. So pat press, the first like 25, 30, 40% of the way out, and then swipe it on a towel and blend. And that's just gonna give you a really awesome look. You'll probably see this a lot more in like bridal or senior portrait makeup, something to where it's up a notch versus something that might just be more everyday wear. So if you wanna add a little flare to your eyeshadow, a halo is exactly how you do that. And you can do this to any eyeshadow look. It doesn't just have to be this specific tutorial, which I really like. Now, the only thing I have left to do is put on some mascara, but that is an everyday look with our Tans palette, and you got to learn what a halo was when it comes to eyeshadow. So I will see you for tomorrow's tutorial, but thank you guys for joining me.